What kind of parents fight in court? Not to win custody of their child, but to avoid her altogether. At just 12 years old, I watched my mom and dad argue over who shouldn't have to raise me, as if I were a burden to pass off. But years later, the girl they discarded inherited $2 million and came back with power they never saw coming. Subscribe now for a story that will break your heart and maybe heal it too. I was 12 when my world fell apart. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon, the kind where the sky seemed permanently gray and the wind howled like it knew what was coming. I remember sitting cross-legged on our beige living room rug, absent-mindedly flipping through a picture book I'd outgrown, when my mom called me in that voice, the one that wasn't angry but too calm. Unnaturally calm. "Melissa, we need to talk," my father said, his hands folded neatly in his lap like he was about to give a lecture at work, not detonate my childhood. I looked between them. My mom's knuckles were white from gripping her mug too tightly, her lips pressed into a thin line. My father kept his eyes on the coffee table as though avoiding mine would soften the blow. Then she said it. "We're getting a divorce." The word sliced the air like a blade, and for a moment I couldn't process what I'd heard. Divorce? But we didn't fight. They didn't scream. We were the family that quietly ate dinner together while the news played in the background. Weren't broken. Not outwardly. "Why?" was all I could manage, my voice barely above a whisper. My father cleared his throat, still avoiding my gaze. "We've both met someone else. It's been coming for a while. We just wanted to wait until the right time to tell you." The right time. Like there's ever a right time to tell your only child that everything she knows is being ripped apart. My mother reached out to touch my hand, but I instinctively pulled away. I didn't want her comfort. I didn't want either of them. I wanted my old life back. The one where birthday cakes were shared, where we decorated the tree together, where I didn't feel like a stranger in my own house. "We'll both still be here for you," she added quickly. "You'll have 2 homes now. One with me and one with Dad. It's just going to be different." Different. That word haunted me in the weeks that followed. My dad started packing his things almost immediately, cardboard boxes stacked in the hallway like tombstones to our family. My mother, meanwhile, busied herself redecorating, as if changing the curtains and repainting the hallway could erase the shadow of the man who'd once tucked me in every night. Then came Jerry. "Melissa, meet Jerry," my mother said one sunny afternoon, too brightly as if she were introducing a new neighbor, not the man she'd replaced my father with. "And this is his daughter, Victoria." Victoria was 2 years older than me, tall and lean with perfect posture and a perfect scowl. She glanced at me like I was gum on her shoe. "Nice to meet you," she said flatly, eyes cold and unreadable. I forced a smile, still clinging to some foolish hope that maybe, just maybe, we'd become something like sisters. That maybe things wouldn't be so bad. That hope would die quickly. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the muffled sound of new laughter echoing from downstairs. My parents had promised I wouldn't feel alone. But as I pulled the blanket up to my chin and blinked back tears, I realized something that cut deeper than anything they had said in that living room. I already was. Jerry and Victoria moved in faster than I could make sense of what was happening. One week it was just me and Mom in our quiet, strangely hollow house. The next, there were suitcases in the hallway, men hauling in furniture, and voices I didn't recognize filling the rooms I once called my own. The master bedroom became theirs, my mother and Jerry's. My mom's floral bedsheets were gone, replaced by navy blue stripes and stiff hotel-like pillows. The smell of Jerry's cologne, strong, woody, and unwelcome, lingered in the hallway. Even the kitchen changed. My cereal was pushed to the back of the cupboard to make room for Victoria's gluten-free snacks and protein bars. I tried to be open. I really did. On Victoria's first full day in the house, I offered her one of my favorite books, a worn copy of A Wrinkle in Time, its corners frayed from being loved. I even brought over my old collection of gel pens, thinking maybe we could decorate our notebooks together for school. She looked at me, eyes narrowed, and said coldly, "We're not sisters. And we're never going to be friends." Then she slammed her door. After that, everything changed. My toys began disappearing. My favorite porcelain doll gone. My stuffed otter, which I'd slept with since kindergarten, suddenly nowhere to be found. I found it weeks later, soaking wet in the bathroom trash can. Victoria shrugged when I confronted her. "It's just a toy," she said. "Grow up." My mom barely looked up from her tablet when I told her. "Maybe you misplaced it, sweetie." Things get lost sometimes. Well, things didn't just get lost. They were being taken. I was being erased. And it wasn't just the things. It was time. Love. Victoria's so gifted, Mom would say to her friends on the phone, not realizing I could hear every word from the hallway. We're thinking of enrolling her in Greenhaven Prep. She deserves the best education. What about me? I was getting straight B's and trying my best. But when I brought home a science project that had won second place at the school fair, Mom barely glanced at it. That's nice, Melissa, she said flatly, eyes already drifting back to her magazine. But you could have tried harder. Next time aim for first. I wanted to scream. I said nothing. The final blow came one Saturday afternoon. I was sitting at the dining room table coloring. Something I hadn't done in a while, just something to feel normal again, when I heard a crash in the living room. A vase. Loud. Shattering. I ran in to see water and white lilies scattered across the floor, the ceramic in pieces like broken ice. Melissa did it. Victoria screamed, standing with her hands behind her back, her expression perfectly rehearsed. What? I gasped. I saw her, she added quickly. She was mad. She pushed it. I stood frozen, my heart racing. Jerry stormed into the room. That was your mother's favorite vase, he barked. Go to your room. No allowance this month. And you'll be paying for that. I turned to my mom. Pleading. Begging. She's lying. I didn't touch it. But Mom didn't even look at me. She just shook her head, disappointed. That night I lay in my bed, the moonlight casting pale shadows across my wall. I listened to the muffled sound of Victoria laughing in the living room, probably eating ice cream and watching a movie with my mom. But she didn't feel like mine anymore. It was in that silence, cold, stretched thin like frost on a window pane, that I realized. This wasn't my home. It never had been. The weekend I went to stay with Dad for the first time after the divorce. I packed with cautious hope. I brought my favorite hoodie, a few books, and a small Polaroid of the three of us, back when we were still a family. It felt almost sacred now, like a relic from a vanished world. When he picked me up, he barely made eye contact. Got everything? He asked, as if this was just another errand to check off. I nodded and climbed into the car. His new place was an apartment across town. Modern, white, sterile. There were no framed photos, no warm throws or family knickknacks. Just sleek furniture and minimalist lighting. It didn't smell like Dad's old cologne or Mom's cinnamon candles. It smelled like nothing. Then she appeared. Melissa. Welcome, said Amy, his new wife. Her smile was wide and perfectly symmetrical, like something from a brochure for dental implants. She wore yoga pants and a tight tank top and looked maybe 20 years younger than my mom. She smelled like lavender and incense. I hated it immediately. She led me to a small room at the end of the hall. Bare walls, a creaky twin bed, a lamp that flickered slightly. Make yourself comfortable, she said. Hope you like Tibetan tea. I'll make you a cup. I forced a thank you and dropped my bag, sitting gingerly on the edge of the bed. It creaked beneath my weight. I felt like a guest in someone else's life. Later that evening, Amy handed me a steaming mug. Great for your immune system, she said with a wink. I took a cautious sip. It was bitter, earthy. A second sip. My throat began to itch. I coughed once. Then again. My chest tightened like a vice was clamping down. I dropped the mug. Dad, I rasped, clutching at my throat. Amy rolled her eyes. It's just tea, sweetheart. No need to be dramatic. I gasped for air. My eyes watered. My skin flushed hot. I can't breathe. Melissa? My father finally turned, his face shifting from annoyance to alarm. Are you okay? My knees buckled. Darkness crept into the corners of my vision. I heard Amy's voice, cold, dismissive. She's faking it. It's just attention-seeking. I blacked out. When I woke, I was in a hospital bed with a tube in my nose and an oxygen monitor beeping steadily beside me. The room smelled sterile. Too much bleach and not enough comfort. Dad sat at the edge of the bed, eyes red-rimmed, his hands shaking slightly. You had a severe allergic reaction, he said quietly. The doctor said if we'd waited a little longer. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I stared at him. Not with fear. Not even with sadness. Just hollow disbelief. She didn't believe me, I croaked. He nodded. I know. Sorry. But then came the words that cut deepest. Melissa, I think it might be better if you don't stay at our place anymore. Emmy's not comfortable. Things are already complicated with her daughter. You understand, right? I stared at him stunned. Waiting. Hoping he would take it back. Say he was joking. Say he'd fight for me. But all he did was look away. The ride back to my mother's house was silent. He didn't even walk me to the door. Inside, Mom barely looked up. You're back, she said, turning a page in her magazine. No hug. No welcome. I climbed the stairs and shut my bedroom door behind me. I didn't cry. Not right away. Instead, I pulled out the old Polaroid I'd brought, the one with the three of us smiling on a summer day at the lake. I tore it in half. Then in quarters. And then I cried. After Dad dropped me off like forgotten luggage and Mom offered nothing more than a passing glance, I spent that night curled up on the floor beside my bed. I didn't want to sleep in it, not after everything. It didn't feel like mine anymore. Nothing did. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table staring blankly at my cereal. Victoria had already taken the last banana and knocked over the milk, not bothering to clean it up. Mom was on her phone scrolling. I could have been invisible. That's when I thought of her, Grandma Helen, Dad's mom. She used to visit every Christmas when I was younger. Always brought peanut brittle in a red tin and wore that faded green scarf with the pine trees. She smelled like books and vanilla. When she hugged me, it felt like the world slowed down for a moment. Safe. So warm. I hadn't seen her since the divorce. I didn't tell Mom I was leaving. I just packed a small bag and walked. 2 buses and a mile-long walk later, I was standing in front of Grandma's little yellow house, the one with ivy crawling up the porch railing. I raised my hand to knock, but before I could, the door opened. Melissa, she gasped, eyes wide behind her glasses. I broke. I dropped my bag and fell into her arms, sobbing, ugly, body-shaking sobs. She held me without asking questions. Just wrapped me up in that old green scarf and whispered, "Shoo, baby. You're safe now." Her house smelled like cinnamon bread and old books. The TV was never too loud. The rooms were filled with overstuffed chairs, crocheted pillows, and shelves brimming with memories. That first afternoon she made tea, not bitter, not dangerous. Just chamomile. And peanut butter toast with banana slices. We sat at her little round kitchen table while sunlight filtered through lace curtains. "Tell me everything," she said softly. And I did. I told her about the divorce, Victoria, the vase, the tea, the hospital, the silence. I told her how I felt like a ghost in 2 homes that never wanted me. How I had no place left. When I finished, she didn't gasp or cry or offer empty words. She simply reached across the table, took my hand in hers and said, "You can stay here as long as you want. My door is always open to you." The next days were peace. Grandma gave me a room of my own, the spare bedroom that used to be Grandpa's study. It had a window that looked out onto her rose garden and a bookshelf taller than I was. Every morning we had breakfast together and every evening we baked cookies, bread, even a failed souffle that collapsed into a delicious mess. She asked about my school, my interests, my dreams. No one had asked me those things in a long, long time. When I mentioned struggling in math, she said, "We'll fix that." And she did. Grandma had once been a college professor, literature and history, but she had a mind for everything. She made algebra feel like puzzles. Reading became adventure. She'd turn an ordinary textbook into a storybook with her voice and metaphors. "Education is power," she'd say, stirring tomato soup. "They can take a lot from you in life, sweetheart. But they can't take your mind." I started doing better in school. A lot better. And the more I succeeded, the more I stayed. At first it was just weekends. Then weekdays. Eventually I stopped going back to Mom's altogether. Oddly enough, no one seemed to notice. Once when a teacher tried to call home, my mom told her I was with my dad. My dad told her I was with my mom. Neither of them knew where I actually was. They didn't care enough to ask. One afternoon, Grandma came into the living room holding an envelope. "There's something we need to talk about," she said gently. She sat down beside me and explained that my school had contacted a guardianship service. A social worker was coming. Apparently, they were concerned about my living situation. My heart dropped. "Are they going to take me away from you?" "No," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Not if I have anything to say about it." And she did. That night, I heard her on the phone for hours, talking to lawyers, caseworkers, and a judge's assistant. She was fierce, calm but immovable. It was the first time I had ever seen someone fight for me. When I went to bed, I cried again. But this time they were tears of something new. Relief. Belonging. Hope. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was beginning to heal. The courthouse smelled like stale coffee and old carpet. Everything was beige. Beige walls, beige tiles, beige benches. Even the people seemed faded, like they'd been sitting in that building for years, waiting for something that might never come. I sat beside Grandma on a wooden bench outside courtroom 3B, clutching the sleeve of her sweater. My palms were sweaty, my stomach twisted in knots. I wasn't sure what scared me more, the possibility of being taken away, or the fact that no one seemed to want to keep me at all. He squeezed my hand. "No matter what happens in there," she whispered, "I'm not letting go of you." When they called us in, everything felt too big. The courtroom was filled with polished wood, tall windows, and cold, indifferent eyes. At the front sat a woman in a black robe, silver-rimmed glasses resting low on her nose, Judge Connolly. To my left sat my mom and Jerry, arms folded, expressions tight. Victoria wasn't there. To the right sat my dad and Amy. She wore a powder blue blazer and had her arms crossed like she was waiting for a dentist appointment. No one looked at me. Not once. "We are here today to determine the permanent living arrangements for Melissa Wilson," the judge began. Her voice was steady, neutral. My heart pounded. I waited for one of them, any of them, to speak up. To say they wanted me. That they'd made a mistake. That they missed me. But what happened next was something I could never have prepared for. My dad stood up first. "Your Honor," he said, his voice tight, "Melissa should stay with her mother. I've started a new family now, and we don't have the space, or stability, to accommodate her full-time." My stomach dropped. Before I could even process it, my mother shot up. "Oh no you don't," she snapped, pointing a finger. "I have a job. I can't be expected to take care of her all the time. Jerry and we have our own household now." The room went quiet. Not with shock, but with disappointment. The judge slowly removed her glasses, pinched the bridge of her nose and looked at me. "Melissa," she said, her voice softening, "I'm so sorry you're going through this." I nodded, unable to speak. My throat was tight. My hands trembled. This wasn't a custody battle. It was a rejection hearing. Then Grandma stood. Strong. Proud. Taken. "If I may speak, Your Honor," she said. The judge nodded. "I am Helen Wilson. I'm Melissa's paternal grandmother. I've been caring for her for the past several months. She's safe. She's thriving. And most importantly, she's wanted." She walked forward, hands steady as she laid a folder on the judge's desk. "In here you'll find documentation of my income, housing, and legal preparedness to take full custody. I may not be young, but I am capable. And I love her. That's more than I can say for what she's gotten from her parents." The silence in the courtroom was thunderous. The judge opened the folder, scanned a few pages, then looked up again. "Melissa," she said gently, "is that what you want?" I looked at Grandma. She was already looking at me. Her eyes were tired but fierce. Fierce with love. "Yes," I whispered. "She's my home." The gavel came down. Custody granted. I should have felt relief. And in a way I did. But beneath that relief, buried deep, was something else. Not sadness. Not anger. It's the truth. The truth that I had finally stopped hoping they would change. And in that moment I let go. Not of pain, but of them. After the court gave Grandma full custody, the silence from my parents was louder than ever. No calls. No questions. No birthday card. No apology. But by then I no longer needed their noise to feel real. I had Grandma, and that changed everything. Life in her little yellow house wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Every morning I woke to the smell of fresh coffee and baked apples. Every night we ate dinner together at the same kitchen table. No phones. No distractions. Just conversation. She asked me about school, friends, books. She listened like what I said mattered. Because to her it did. Academically I began to bloom. With her tutoring I didn't just pass math, I excelled. History became more than dates. It became stories she brought to life. English essays stopped being chores and started becoming therapy. My teachers noticed. I started winning awards, placing in competitions, and for the first time I felt seen. But not in a way that came with strings or expectations. Just pride. Pure, unfiltered pride. But it wasn't just school. Grandma taught me to live. To trust. To breathe. On weekends we tended to her rose garden, her wrinkled hands guiding mine through the soil. She taught me to knead dough, to write checks, to speak my truth with dignity. She treated me like a person, not a problem. There were still shadows, of course. Birthdays without a call from mom, holidays when classmates went to see both parents while I stayed rooted in one place. But those shadows never swallowed me whole. Because now there was light. By sophomore year of high school I knew what I wanted to do. Finance. Investment. I wanted to understand money, not just how to make it but how to protect it. Maybe it was the trauma of having none, of watching adults weaponize it, of seeing love get priced and measured and traded like currency. I told Grandma one night over lasagna, I want to learn how to build a life no one can take from me. She looked at me and said, then let's start now. He helped me apply to every scholarship, every program. She called in old contacts from her university days, asked questions at the bank, taught me how to read loan agreements, how to say no to what looks good but feels wrong. By senior year I was accepted into Westfield College, a top-tier business program, full scholarship. When the letter arrived she cried harder than I did. That's my girl, she whispered, and I think part of me broke and healed in the same moment. Graduation day came with sun-soaked skies and a sea of blue gowns. My name echoed through the loudspeakers as I crossed the stage, diploma in hand, eyes searching the crowd. Mom wasn't there. Dad wasn't there. But Grandma? She was front row, standing, clapping, tears rolling down her cheeks. She brought a homemade sign that said, Melissa Wilson. My granddaughter. My legacy. I wasn't the top of the class, but I felt like I had won something bigger than valedictorian. A second chance. College was a new world. Westfield was buzzing with opportunity. Lectures that lit fires in my brain, internships that opened doors I didn't know existed. I poured myself into everything. Debate club, student finance council, even a mentorship program for foster youth. My story gave me something no textbook could. Grit. Perspective. Purpose. People asked where I got my drive. I told them, a garden. Cup of tea. And a woman who never gave up on me. Grandma stayed involved even as I moved into the dorms. Every week she sent care packages. Homemade cookies, lavender sachets, clippings from the local paper where she'd underlined articles about strong women in business. Her notes always ended the same way. I'm proud of you. She never said goodbye on the phone. She always said, go get 'em. Junior year I got an email I never wanted. Grandma had passed away in her sleep. Peacefully, they said. Without pain. I stared at the screen for hours, unable to comprehend a world where she no longer existed. She had been my constant, my compass, my safety net. Her home wasn't just shelter. It was soul. The days after were a blur. Funeral arrangements, flights, condolences. The church overflowed. Students, neighbors, colleagues. People I'd never met but who had stories about how she had touched their lives. I delivered her eulogy with shaking hands and a heart that felt both broken and full. I called her, the mother I didn't deserve but was lucky enough to have anyway. My parents didn't attend. They didn't send flowers. They didn't ask how I was. And for once that didn't devastate me. Because I wasn't that little girl anymore, crying at the edge of two homes that didn't want her. I was a young woman, armed with knowledge, compassion, and a name that stood for something more than abandonment. Helen Wilson didn't just raise me. She rebuilt me. 3 weeks after the funeral, I received a letter from the notary's office requesting my presence for the reading of Grandma's will. I hadn't expected anything. I would have been content with a scarf or a recipe book in her handwriting. Her love was her legacy, and that was more than enough. But when I walked into the office that gray Monday afternoon, I immediately sensed something was off. My mother was already seated on one side of the small conference table, arms crossed, face drawn but carefully composed. My father was on the other side, tapping his fingers on the wood, looking everywhere but at me. They hadn't spoken in years, yet here they were, brought together not by remorse or family obligation, but by the scent of money. The notary, a balding man in his 60s with kind eyes and a monotone voice, adjusted his glasses and began. "Shall we begin?" he asked. Without waiting for a reply, he opened a thick envelope and started reading. "To my beloved granddaughter, Melissa Wilson, I leave my entire estate, including my home, all its contents, and my financial holdings totaling $2 million. The room went still. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause. My ears rang. I blinked. 2 million. Then the explosion came. My father stood up so fast his chair skidded backward. That's impossible. I'm her only son. She can't just leave everything to a child. My mother jumped in, her voice shrill and high-pitched. Surely there's some mistake. Melissa is just a college student. She doesn't know how to manage that kind of responsibility. We're her family too. I sat frozen, lips parted, heart racing. The notary calmly raised his hand, signaling for silence. There's more, he said, pulling out a sealed letter. Mrs. Helen Wilson left a personal statement to be read at this moment. He unfolded the paper and began. My dearest Melissa, if this letter is being read, it means I am no longer with you. But my love for you extends beyond this life. You were the daughter of my heart, the one who stood by me when everyone else walked away. To my son and his ex-wife, I am deeply disappointed in how you abandoned a child you brought into this world. A child is not an inconvenience to be discarded when life gets difficult. It is a privilege to love and raise someone. Your actions have shown me that you do not deserve to benefit from the life I've built. My decision is final and legally binding. The letter ended with, Melissa, use this gift wisely. Build the life you deserve. Be fearless. And never forget, you were always my greatest joy. The silence afterward was unbearable. My parents' faces had gone pale, but their expressions shifted rapidly, from shock to disbelief to something far uglier, calculation. My mother suddenly adopted a sickly sweet tone. Melissa, sweetie, she said, leaning forward. I know things have been hard between us, but maybe this is a chance to reconnect. Maybe you'd consider sharing? We're still family. Yes, my father added quickly. Let's be reasonable. Surely we can work something out. We can even help you manage the money, invest it. We have experience. I looked at them both. Two people who had abandoned me when I had nothing, now eager to return when I had everything. And suddenly I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I wasn't that scared 12-year-old crying in a stranger's house. I turned to the notary. Thank you, I said firmly. I'll follow up with the paperwork this week. Then I stood. My mother opened her mouth to say something else, but I was already walking toward the door. Their voices faded behind me, buried beneath years of absence and silence. That night, I sat in Grandma's old study with the fireplace lit and her scarf draped around my shoulders. On the desk was her old photo of us baking cookies, flour dusting our noses, her eyes laughing behind her glasses. $2 million now sat in an account with my name on it. But it wasn't the number that made me feel powerful. It was the fact that someone had loved me enough to entrust me with it. Someone had seen me, really seen me, and deemed me worthy. And no amount of guilt, manipulation, or belated affection from people who once tossed me aside could take that away. A few days after the will reading, I received a phone call from my mother. Her voice was unusually cheerful, laced with a rehearsed warmth that felt more awkward than comforting. Melissa, sweetie, she said. It's been so long. We were just talking about you last night. Why don't you come over for dinner? The whole family would love to see you. I almost laughed out loud. There had been no whole family when I was sleeping on the floor of Grandma's guest room, hoping someone, anyone, would remember I existed. But something inside me, call it curiosity or closure, told me to say yes. The next evening I stood in front of the house where I once lived. It looked smaller now. Less like a fortress and more like a stage set. My mother answered the door with a tight smile and watery eyes. Jerry was behind her, trying too hard to look pleased. Victoria hovered in the hallway, her arms crossed and mouth pressed into a thin line. They all said hello with carefully measured politeness, like a family in a commercial for something they didn't believe in. Dinner was awkward. For small talk. Questions about college delivered like reading from a script. Then came the performance. The house is falling apart, my mother sighed dramatically. The roof leaks, the water heater's ancient, and poor Victoria wants to apply to private colleges, but our finances are, well, strained. I nodded, sipping my water. I waited. And then it came. You've been doing well, she said, eyes narrowing just slightly. And I know your grandmother left you resources. Maybe we could talk about how you might be able to help. I set my fork down slowly. Do you know what I'm studying? I asked. She blinked. Excuse me. My major. At Westfield. Do you know what it is? She hesitated, glancing toward Jerry. Well, I think it was finance? Investment management, I corrected. Do you know what semester I'm in? Or what my thesis is about? Or even what classes I'm taking? Silence. I pushed back my chair. It's okay, I said quietly. You don't have to pretend. I'm not here to reconnect. I'm here because I needed to see it clearly, to remind myself why I stopped hoping you'd change. My mother's expression shifted, the softness cracking. That's not fair, Melissa. We're trying. We're still your family. No, I replied, standing. Family doesn't forget you exist. Family doesn't show up only when there's money. Their faces tensed, anger and embarrassment simmering beneath their fragile civility. I walked out without another word. As the door shut behind me, I felt a strange relief. The chapter had closed. Not in fire or fury, but with finality. A week later, I visited my father. His home was run down. Paint peeled at the corners, the lawn overgrown. He opened the door with hesitation, Amy lingering behind him. There was a little boy peeking from the hallway. This is Nathan, my father said. Your brother. The word hit differently. Nathan looked to be about 9, thin with large eyes and nervous energy. He stared at me like I was a storybook character come to life. We sat down in the living room. My father cleared his throat. Nathan's very bright. We'd like to enroll him in Westbrook Academy, but tuition is steep. We were hoping, given your situation, you might. You mean pay for it? I cut in, calm but direct. He looked away. We'll help. Your family. Am I asked. Because when I had nowhere to sleep, you told me to go back to Mom. When I nearly died from an allergic reaction in your kitchen, you let Amy dismiss it. You didn't visit me in the hospital. You didn't even fight to keep me in your life. And now, suddenly, I'm family again because you need money? Amy's voice turned sharp. That's uncalled for, young lady. We're asking for your help, not your judgment. I turned back to my father. And if I don't help, what then? His jaw tightened. Then we'll take legal action. As your parents, we're entitled to part of the inheritance. I didn't flinch. You're not. Grandma had full custody. You relinquished all rights. The law is clear. Their faces dropped. I stood to leave. As I walked toward the door, I paused and glanced back at Nathan. He looked scared, confused. Not unlike how I looked at that age. I didn't say anything to him then, but the image stayed with me. Over the following weeks, I focused on my studies and reviewed my financial plan. I spoke to mentors, filed paperwork, and set up a foundation in Grandma's name, the Helen Wilson Fund, for girls aging out of foster care and neglected family structures. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't need to. The legacy was never about revenge. It was about healing forward, not backward. But sometimes, in the quiet of night, I thought of Nathan. I didn't owe him anything, but I knew he hadn't chosen this. Maybe, just maybe, one day I'd reach out, not for them but for him. For the child still trapped in the house I'd escaped from. And so I moved on, not with bitterness but with clarity. My past didn't define me. My pain didn't control me. I had built something they couldn't touch. A life rooted in love, legacy, and self-worth. And that, more than any inheritance, was the true gift Grandma left me.